Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living Well with Dr. Sheila. I am your host, Dr. Sheila Craig Whiteman, and thank you so much for joining me today. I have a very interesting guest today, but before I do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about what this show is about. So, this show is a health and wellness show. So, we talk about any topic that has to do with you living your best life, and that could be spiritual health, mental health, and physical health. Today, we're going to talk to a friend of mine. So I do know her. I always say, I know you all are like, you know an awful lot of people. Yes, I do. But I do know her, and she is just really an inspiration. So we're going to talk to Joy Stone today. I'm going to look down a little bit just to read you a little bit of her bio, and then we're going to bring her on. So for 2 decades, Joy Stone has been helping others rise above fear, conquer anxiety, and overcome self-doubt to transform their lives from surviving to thriving. Ah, very nice. Enduring to enjoying and struggling to succeeding. She is the author of bestsellers If I Am So Spiritual, Why Am I So Anxious? How to Find Your Center and Reclaim Your Joy, and Releasing Self Doubt. In addition to coaching individuals, she also created a group coaching experience from fear to freedom. Her unique coaching and speaking styles blend research from the field of positive psychology, success strategies, mindset, and neuroscience with life empowering practices from mindfulness, spirituality, and yoga psychology. She is certified in both positive psychology coaching and applied positive psychology. Joy is a certified yoga teacher in the, and she can tell me if I said this correctly when she comes on, Anusara style, a therapeutic application of yoga psychology and practice. For more information, visit joy at joystonecoaching.com. And we'll talk about how to contact Joy a little bit later too in the show. So if you missed that little part, it's going to come back later. So we're going to start out by first bringing Joy on. And before I bring Joy on, I'm just going to give Joy a heads up because I'm going to ask her about this yoga style because that's something that's I haven't heard. So let's bring her on first, and then we're going to talk a little bit about her and about yoga and everything else that we can talk about. So let's bring her on. Hello, Joy.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be
Good,
here.
good. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure our audience will too, and they'll get a lot out of this conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I always love talking about anxiety, not in the traditional way. So we'll dive into that, but it's such an important topic because so many people are dealing with it and well-being and mindset and all the things we can do. Yeah.
Yeah. And right now it seems to be really at a high um,
Yeah.
crisis point almost. You hear a lot of stories, and probably many of us even know someone who is dealing with more anxiety than usual at
Absolutely.
this point. Yeah. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit? Tell us about yourself. Tell us how. Tell us about more about your background because that was very interesting. Actually, that short bio. So tell us a little bit about your background, and then just give us a little bit more information about you. We want to always like to know about the people we are speaking with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay. So this is, I always say that I come to this work like so many of us do, and we're in our profession or in our, passions or our callings, whatever, however we get to the place we are in life, we come to it often out of our own experience. And that is exactly what happened for me getting into this seat right now, helping men and women with anxiety really conquer that. It was through my own journey of struggling with anxiety myself for so many years. So personally, I grew up in a home with a lot of adversity, a lot of alcoholism, drug addiction, absent parents, addicted parents, alcoholic parents, grandparents. It was just ran through every part of my, family, and my childhood was just, you know, overtaken with that. So I grew up having to sort of survive and find safety when there wasn't really any safety or security. And I developed a lot of anxiety. And also at the same time, even though I had all of this anxiety going on, which is really the feeling of impending doom, right? It's the feeling of like chronic worry about the future. It's a feeling that you can't rest and relax. You aren't safe. You're on hyper alert. You're hyper focused on surviving, you know? So I grew up feeling that way, but at the same time, I grew up pretending to be okay. When you grow up in a family like I did, there's really no normalcy. Not that there ever is, but I mean, we're all different and have our own experiences, and we're so much alike too. But as a child, you're seeking that feeling of belonging and fitting in and being normal and not standing out. So I would really try to mimic people around me, things around me that seemed normal. So as that was happening, I was in no way at any point learning about myself, or, you know, as I grew up in those stages where you're supposed to be discovering yourself and finding yourself, that wasn't happening. So there was always this massive disconnection and dis-ease and feeling that I was performing in life, not belonging. And so I grew up, you know, lots of things happened in that experience as I grew up. And my mom, when I was 10 years old, remarried. She married her husband, eventually got divorced, but she had a baby. And I had a brother who was 10 years younger than me. And my mom was still struggling with her own alcoholism. So at that point, at 10 years old, I started to take care of my brother. And so now I was also having to be an adult. So there was just a lot of dynamics happening. And I share this because just to give context, that what I had to do to get from where I was to where I am today has taken all of the things that I share with people. So I'm not just sharing from an academic point of view, right? You shared a lot of like, my certifications or my academic study, and that's so important too. But what I really have, I think the most value that I have to offer people is and share with people is the personal experience that I had taking these steps and these processes and living this new way of life that I teach, because I've done it myself. So fast forward from that place, when I became older, I left the situation. I often say, we don't solve our anxiety, we don't solve our fear or self doubt by changing our environment necessarily. We need to for an unsafe environment, but we go wherever we are, right, so to speak. So those coping mechanisms that I learned in my childhood home came right with me everywhere that I went. So there was a real incapacity for me to connect with people deeply, to really have success in my life, because I certainly couldn't feel happy and joy. Those were not emotions that I felt a lot. So many things started to happen in my life, a lot of challenges, right? Just not a lot of life skills. And my anxiety was, increasing. And when I was 18, I moved out with a neighborhood friend of mine who also struggled in her childhood home and tried to make my way in the world, really. And I encountered just tons of obstacles and inner setbacks. And I write more about that in my book. But just to fast forward, I ended up hitting a bottom with that and finding a teacher in my life just out of circumstance. Found an amazing therapist who was also a spiritual teacher and really started teaching me that there was nothing wrong with me. Up until that point in my life, I had been working on myself, trying to fix myself, figure myself out, fit in, belong. I was always hyper focused on the problem that I thought I was. And I was also extremely angry and resentful because of the way I grew up. I had a lot of anger, a lot of blame, a lot of toxic emotions just stirring inside of me that I hadn't learned how to cope with. And so I met this teacher, and I'll take a pause here after this. I met this teacher, and she started to tell me things like, there's more right about you than wrong. There's really nothing wrong with you. Your nature is good. And she started to just have me change a little bit. She started to teach me that I was a survivor, not a victim, and really helped me develop as a person instead of treating just my problems. And this was a huge paradigm shift in my life, because what I've discovered over time, and is the essence of my work, is that the things that will make you less anxious or less depressed or less anything are not always the same things that will make you happy, thrive, succeed, overcome anxiety. And we often think they are. We think if I, take the deep breaths, or if I learn how to analyze my thoughts, or if I forgive my parents, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to be happy. And that actually isn't true. Those are good things to do, but it doesn't really make that shift inside that I found needs to happen for actual freedom from anxiety. So when I met that teacher at that point, I was already diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, with generalized anxiety, and those labels really somewhere inside of me sent me on a journey to find out something else about myself. And I think in a way that's why I met this woman. So that's a pause. I'll pause right there, but that's a big answer. So there's a lot of history to how I ended up here personally, and then that led me into my professional seeking, right?
Hmm. That was really powerful, though. That was a powerful answer to that question. Wow, that background, and actually, you're one of the things you said when you said, "Yes, I read your certifications, but I've been through this, so I know."
Yeah,
And wow, I mean, that to me really struck me because that would um, lead me to believe that you understand. It's just not a matter of I learned this and this is the way this goes, but I understand, and if this is not, if not this, then that kind of thing, there's other avenues or whatever. So,
absolutely.
yeah, I think wow, what you're doing is really powerful. Certainly your program it must be really helping quite a few people.
Aw, thanks. And I think it's true that there's a word in if you look at like even more modern models, but if you look at in history and with yoga, and we'll get into yoga and what yoga really is beyond the body, there's a whole philosophy, there's a whole psychology of yoga, of vast wisdom that has to do with the mind, which influences the body in our life. But there's this really beautiful Sanskrit word, and that's just an ancient language, and it's acharya, and acharya means a teacher, a mentor, someone who has walked the path before you. So someone who knows how to get from where you are to where you want to be because they've walked it. And there's absolute power in that. If you even look at like modern, like 12-step type of programs, right? There's lots of, there is a sponsor or a mentor. It's someone who has been where you are, has hit that bottom, who has walked through that diversity, who or that adversity, who understands what it really takes, beyond just the mind and beyond just learning about it. And there is a depth to that, so that's why I think I can kind of more boldly say what I believe about anxiety beyond the biomedical lens, right? Like I believe in the biomedical lens of anxiety as well, and it's treated and helped so many people, and it's certainly helped me. But that gets us to, in many places, like a baseline to a place that it didn't get me to thriving. And so that's why I think I can be a little bold in saying that is that I've lived it and experienced it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I'll go back to one of the questions that I had too, and you kind of alluded on this just a minute ago when you were talking, and that is the type of yoga, the therapeutic
Yeah,
yoga.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a whole field of yoga now. It's called yoga therapy, and it's branched out from, and really all yoga is therapy. And when we use the word therapy, it's kind of like it helps us come back into a place of wholeness, right? Like we're always in a place of wholeness, but balance, harmony, alignment. Um, so not all yoga is about a classroom setting of yoga where we go into a class and we move our body for an hour. We get into these funny postures. Yoga is really about the essence of it is about the mind. So we look at in yoga that all of our suffering, right, is created at the level of the mind. And this is really a challenging one. So and I'll dive into that more and how that relates to yoga or to anxiety. But yoga teaches us that within us is a place that is free from suffering. Within us is a place that's completely whole and complete. And that if we knew this place, we would not suffer, or we would suffer much less, put it that way. We always will suffer a little bit because we have this mind that creates all sorts of layered experience, and we have things that happen to us, right? We have definite darkness that goes on in the world. um, but we would suffer less because we'd be coming at it from a place of inner stability, inner knowing. And I want to unpack this more because I know this is a big topic, and it does sound almost like spiritual bypassing, or we can put our heads in the sand like, oh wait, if we just suffer less if we just know ourselves, and there's all this stuff going on in the world, and maybe we've been through hard things or trauma. It's not about that at all. But yoga therapy is really about finding that balance within yourself, that harmony within yourself, that peace within yourself, the joy within yourself, because what I teach, and I know it to be true in my experience, is that feelings like joy or wholeness or peace are states of being. They are not emotions. They are not feelings. There's a feeling like no one likes me. I'm not good enough. There's feelings of stress. There's feelings of unworthiness. There's feelings of happiness. You get something, you like it, someone gives you a compliment, you feel good. But your essence, your state of being is peaceful and joyful and whole and complete. And so yoga therapy is helping us to find that. It's a long answer, but I hope that makes some sense, in the terms of, it's not just the physical body. The body's one gateway into knowing ourselves better, but yoga starts with the mind, and the mind influences everything in our life.
Right, right. So therapeutic yoga, is it using specific postures?
They use,
Um,
yeah, therapeutic yoga uses postures, it uses breath, it uses lifestyle adjustments, mindset, it uses mantra. So there's a lot of tools that you bring into yoga therapy. And I've sort of created out of that my own sort of style, what I call the wheel of freedom, and a four module or a four-part sort of system that if that you influence, you nourish, you pay attention to your body, to your mind, to your emotions, to your spirit. And so you have to be nourishing all parts of yourself. It's like you're your main vessel in your life. You're your constant companion. You're that part of you that goes everywhere. And it's from you that you're seeing the world. Like nobody's seeing the world in the exact same way. And we know that. So
mhm.
how we show up influences everything in our life. If we're consistently showing up with that anxious mind or that anxious body or those anxious emotions, right? Or that disconnection from self, we're going to keep getting the same results or similar results no matter how much outside stuff we try to change or manage or control triggers. So yoga therapy is using all of the modalities that yoga has to offer: mantra, food, lifestyle, postures, breath, and several other things. And and they bring that in to create a unique practice for the individual. So it's very individualized versus going to a class and everybody's just doing the same poses or the same mantra or the same, you know, whatever. Yeah.
So people can find therapeutic yoga?
Yeah, it's yoga therapy. You could Google yoga therapy. There's a whole accreditation for it. It's called International School of Yoga Therapists. And in fact, the president of the International School of Yoga Therapy actually wrote the foreword to my book.
Wow.
So, and it's just a totally different, because yoga is therapeutic at its essence. Yoga is about balance and harmony. Yoga is about coming back home to yourself. And I'm using those words, but it's not about, it's become a different thing in the West. It's become poses. So when you hear the word yoga, most people think yoga poses, they think exercise, they think I'm too inflexible to do yoga. Yoga, you could do yoga and never do a pose. Okay, in the Yoga Sutra, which is an ancient text of yoga, which is what my entire system is partially based on, is that and positive psychology. I merge East and West. Is there's 195 teachings, little teachings that are deep that you practice. Within the sutras, only 3 of those are postures. And their only postures is a way to help to cultivate what yoga calls sthira and sukha, which is ease and structure, which is flexibility and boundary, which is softness and strength. So you're trying to balance opposites to create harmony in your life, because life is always changing. Life is
Mhm.
a fluid flow of opposites, and it's in the opposites, in that contrast, that we gain wisdom. So this is kind of some of the work that I bring into my work. It's not very traditional, but it's very powerful. So sitting, for example, and being in a posture, for example, right? You know, like if like I used to be really rigid in my postures, for example, extremely rigid, really harsh, like do them perfectly, be rigid, get everything right. And there's that saying that what you do somewhere, you do everywhere.
Oh,
So when I would sit in my postures and be like, oh, I'm so rigid, or I'm so tense, or I'm so tight, I know I need to soften and release, right? To find balance. I don't need to try harder, which is what most people with anxiety do. We try harder, we work harder, we want, so we worry more. So somebody else who maybe is like checked out, always is sort of, can't focus, who is really, you know, sort of more of that organic letting go, maybe they need to actually create more structure in their container, right? So, but it's through this contrast, it's through light, dark, up, down, in, out, you know, pain, joy, that we learn about who we are. It's not about avoiding, which is what, when we're angry or resentful, we have a ton of anxiety we try to do. We try to avoid challenge, we try to avoid risk, we try to avoid conflict. We can't do that because that's part of life. So we have to learn to enter into it from a place of wisdom. So it's a complete paradigm shift into how I'm teaching about anxiety.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I am so glad I asked that question because I did not know.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
normal because a lot of us don't know that, not because we don't know, we just never talk about it in that way. It's mostly just you go to, and I remember when I first started practicing yoga, classes were 90 minutes to 2 hours, right? Now, because we lean into our tendencies, right? So we all have a tendency to rush and life is
Mhm.
moving fast. So now you'll find yoga classes are like 30 minutes. You have even like 20-minute, lunchtime yogas. Let's check it off our list. Let's just get in there and do our practice as a thing we did today, not an experience we're having. So if we start to try to make our spiritual practice or our self-care practices match our tendencies to rush and be anxious, there's an imbalance. You see?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, and you're absolutely correct about yoga classes because even when you go the meditation part that's at the end, 2 minutes, and actually I used to go to a class where they would say, um, if you don't want it, please leave now so you don't disturb the people
Well,
who
so
want to get the experience. Yeah, yeah, you can just go now, which
exactly.
made sense actually because they'd be laying there and people be rolling up their mats or whatever. So that kind of made sense. It wasn't, I
It
appreciate that actually
does.
because I have to say, sometimes I was one of the ones who was rolling up my mat.
I get it. And you know what? If we have anxious minds, of course we're going to do that. Like I used to hate sitting. I used to hate laying on my back. I used to hate sitting there in meditation. I was like, this is so, I just would get frustrated. I thought, oh God, how long are they going to keep talking? And then, over time, it's like that gap of discomfort, right? We have to build that gap of discomfort because that's how we handle discomfort is going to be like that hinge between success and failure. We have to be able to handle our discomfort.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because when I used to teach yoga, because I don't teach traditional yoga classes anymore. I integrated some of yoga postures into my program, but my program is very based on all the things we're talking about today. Um, is people would like be doing at the end of the class when it was rest time. That's when they would take time to like do their sit-ups or crunches. Like they just couldn't rest. They couldn't let go. And I see that not from a place of judgment, but from a place of, yeah, I get that. I understand that inability to rest and just be present. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to be more conscious of what I'm doing now. And I have been trying, I have to say. So I
yeah,
have been trying because I've been trying to even detox from having something on all the time. You know how you have the television in the background, you have music on in the background, or you whatever. So
yep,
I've been trying to kind of walk around almost in silence, silence with motion for a little bit,
yeah,
just to kind of calm, not to always have so much stimuli coming into my brain constantly,
absolutely.
because I'm one of those people.
I get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, oh my goodness, this is such a wonderful, wonderful conversation. But so, can you just tell us a little bit about so you told us about your work, but why did you start doing it with other people?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So for 14 years, I was in the hospitality industry, right? When I was in my 20s, I got a job with a company that just sort of like snowballed. When you get into something and then you just like, you sort of work your way up, and you just stay there. And I worked for Fairmont Hotels, I worked for Expedia, and I traveled the world. I traveled all over, and it looked so glamorous from the outside. And frankly, for several years, it was really fun, but it wasn't my calling. There was something inside of me that always knew I wanted, because I was really always interested in my own personal development and my own happiness and like, why am I so anxious? I knew why, like from my childhood, but why am I still so anxious? What's, you know, why am I not happy? Like, why am I not confident? And I was always having those questions for myself, no matter how much success I got, because I ended up getting, reaching a high level in my profession in the hospitality industry, working for Fairmont Hotels at the end, and um, in their sales and marketing, and managing or representing two hotels and traveling. It was just like I had the outside success. I owned my own home. I, looked good from the outside, had the car, all the things that were supposed to make me this functioning member of society and successful, and I wasn't. And so I was doing more deeper work at this time too with that teacher that I mentioned. And that led me to yoga. That led me to one day, and this was my experience. I did not practice yoga. I did not take yoga classes. I was in no way athletic. I was in no way physical. I didn't do sports in school because there was no time to do sports in school. I didn't go to my prom. I didn't go to dances. Remember, my parents were alcoholics, drug addicts at the time. I was raising my brother. I didn't have time to go to any school functions. I didn't do anything like that. So I was not a physical, person. But one day I woke up, and I had been studying some of the yoga philosophy with my teacher, that mentor. And I had this deep desire. I woke up and I said, I want to be a yoga teacher. I want to study yoga. And it was the weirdest thing out of the blue. I was living in California at the time. So later that week, I walked down to a local yoga studio in my neighborhood. And I walked in. I said, hey, I want to take I saw they had a sign on their window that said teacher training. I said, hey, I want to take this teacher training. And they said, do you do yoga? And I said, no. And so, but I want to take this. So because it was their first teacher training, they let me in. They kind of needed people, right? So they were like, we'll take you. And so
Lucky.
right? So from that point on, I found, and I started to really get it. And I realized, like I said, I had been spending my whole life trying to feel less anxious. I had not been spending my life getting to know myself, building my confidence, developing my joy, developing my studentship as a person, becoming like free. It's just a different path, working on yourself versus finding that freedom and joy that already exists within you. And I was just having these paradigm shifts and these ahas. And from there, fast forward, I'll just share that I started teaching yoga, ended up leaving my job, which people thought I was crazy. And from that point on, like a little bit of time into it, I had this next calling, which was like, I want to go back to school to study psychology or something, right? I really felt like I had that desire. And at that time, I was thumbing through a magazine, and Harvard professor Tal Ben-Shahar was launching his program. He had taught the most popular class at Harvard on happiness. And he's written great books, and he's a great speaker himself out in the world, making big changes in the world on happiness equaling success, not success equal happiness. So so I saw this ad from him that he was launching this program. And I said, oh my God, that's amazing. Did that. And when I went to Boston and to study with him and we did this program, I started to see the parallels between what yoga was teaching me, yoga psychology, and now what positive psychology is saying, which positive psychology is the study of optimal human flourishing. So it's a field, it's a branch, it's part of psychology, but instead of studying pathology, it's studying why are some people so happy, even if they come out of adversity, even if they've had to overcome terrible things in their life. Why are some people able to do that while others aren't? It doesn't mean they're not capable, but maybe they're not at that point in their life. Why are some people so happy? Why are some people thriving? So it studied that. And that's exactly what yoga teaches us how to do, is to thrive, because life is full of challenge, right? So these two parallels, so I started to see the parallels, and it was helping me in my own life because I did my own inner work first. In my own life, I was having huge, huge, huge growth moments and experiences. And I got the next calling, which is I need to be teaching people this. I need to be sharing this. And I bring in my own unique way because I'm merging now those two modalities, East and West, and then my experience. So it's like a three-pronged kind of thing. And so in 2012, I said, I'm going to open up a little kind of space. 2012, 2013, I'm going to start teaching this. And I just started doing deeper studies out of my living room, these weekend workshops. And then my husband made a little office for me in our back. We had this little house in the back of our house, like a little guest space. He made that into office for me. And I started seeing people. I was certified. I was getting certified and all that too. Right. So, but I started to actually say, I'm going to do this, getting my certifications and doing it. And I absolutely loved it. And from there, just working with people and my own experience and seeing what people really you kind of fine tune things as you do it, right? You get into motion and
Mhm.
clarity happens. And so then I developed From Fear to Freedom, and I have another long term program called Soul School. And it's all based on this work. And I absolutely love it. And I did it because I see a need for it in the world. Most of the conversation around anxiety is that window of anxiety management, is that window of pathology. And what I'm saying is it's completely something else. So I teach these three misperceptions about anxiety. And so I teach a holistic kind of a spiritual, but also scientific path to healing anxiety. Long answer again.
But no, this is great because you're explaining things a little bit different, I think, than most of us would have thought you would say.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you know how oh, she's
Yeah.
going to talk about anxiety. Oh, okay, so it's going to be okay, blah 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 blah. So,
Right.
but you're yeah, so your thought process and your explanations are very different
Yeah.
than what I thought. You know, and that's why one of the reasons why I like having people who talk about who have the same topics per se to have them on the show because boy, there is such a big difference in the way people talk about what they do and their philosophy and background on why they do it. I
Absolutely.
mean, it really is. So as you listen, you're like, oh my, oh my goodness, what an eye opener, because it's certainly an eye opener for me. But we are going to take a quick break because it is commercial break time. Yay, 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 yay. So we're going to take a quick, and it's only 20 seconds, Joyce, so don't get too comfy. But it's only a
Okay.
20-second break, and we will be right back.
Do you suffer from bladder leaks? If you have ever leaked a little when you call for exercise, help is available. 1 in 3 women experience bladder leaks in her lifetime. For a free consultation, visit our website, thepelviccoach.com.
And we are back. That commercial just highlighted a little bit about what I do. So I am the pelvic coach and I help women reduce and eliminate their bladder leaks. So if you've been watching the show for a while, you know that is kind of what I do. I am a health coach and a physical therapist. So that's what my doctorate is. It's a doctorate in physical therapy. And similar to what Joy was talking about, I saw this need, saw so many women having this issue. I'm like, I can do something about this. This is not something that people have to suffer with. So that has been my calling. So I help people, women particularly, to start to reduce and eliminate their bladder leaks because we don't want to be embarrassed about that or worried about it when we really don't have to. But that being said, we are going to get back to our discussion with Joyce Stone because it is so interesting. I don't really want to spend another extra minute talking about something different, but let's talk about your first book. If I'm so spiritual, why am I still so anxious? Um, can you talk a little bit about that? The title is really good too. It's a good title.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, that title came out of exactly what do you hear feedback? Sorry. Is it sound?
Um, Not really,
Okay.
no.
It came out of everything that I'm sharing because I had all the mala beads, if you know what mala beads are, right? Like those yoga beads, right? Some people have the rosaries pin on your
Mhm.
path, but
The
like
big ones,
what?
the big beads.
Yeah, like it's like a necklace with beads on it. They use it as a meditative tool, right? But
Mhm.
I always joke, I had all the mala beads, I had the yoga mat, I knew how to take the 3 breaths, I had taken the retreats, I had rocks, crystals, essential oils. I mean, I had it all. I had all the things. I had all the information. And this is the thing is we get so overloaded with information. But I was not free of anxiety. I was not where I wanted to be. I was still anxious. And to the point that somebody could say something to me. I remember I taught a class once, a yoga class. This was early in my yoga teaching. And someone said to me, "Hey, your class, I like it, but it's kind of slow." And that like put me in bed for like a day. And pretty much it could have taken, I mean, Because what happens is we take something and we spin it in our head through our own. I'm going to talk about how anxiety, how that affects us. But yeah, so I was like, I'm still anxious. I'm still like at the mercy of other people's opinions of me, how people are seeing me. So my book is, if I'm so spiritual, why am I still so anxious? And what I get into is because I open up the first page with, you probably have a stack of books by your bed. You probably know all your triggers. You probably know how to manage your triggers. You probably know the things to avoid. You probably know why you're anxious, but you probably are still anxious. And that's where I was. And so my book is a whole new take on, okay, let's accept that we're anxious. The things that make us less anxious are not the same things that are going to make us free. And so my book is the 7 spiritual principles that I learned, and there's science in there too, the positive psychology, about how I actually got free of that. And so yeah, so if a lot of people walk around going, why am I still so anxious? What's wrong with me? Why do I still feel this way? I've done all this work. It's not fair. I used to think I do more work on myself than most people I know. Why am I the one over here struggling? And that's why I wrote that title. And my book is really dives into, how to develop your confidence, wisdom, and joy, which is your true nature, which is who you are. And I go into my 3-circle model that I love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, in your work, you often say anxiety is a messenger. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So anxiety is absolutely a messenger, as are all of our emotions. And this is something we all need to understand. Like, our emotions is a navigation system. And I used to hear that, sometimes if you're in like a spiritual community or, a self-help community, you'll hear these like things people say, and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, but what is that? And so that was one of the things, like, your emotions are little navigation systems. And the way that I came to understand it, because I had a breakdown that kind of became a breakthrough. You hear that saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had a moment where I was in my car and I was just I was crying so hard. I was in front of the grocery store and I just couldn't go into the grocery store because I was just like, having one of those days where I was just feeling tired of this whole feeling this way. And it was in that moment that I had these 3 sort of epiphanies, and it came out of massive work. It wasn't like, just that culmination of, oh my gosh, my anxiety is showing me where I am in relationship to myself. So my anxiety is a messenger that's showing me where I am in relationship to my true self. Now, this whole context, we have to understand that we have a true self, right? Mm-hmm. We have to understand that we're not just our thoughts. There's a deeper truth inside of us, which is our essence. It's like that part of us that's watching everything. So you have a thought because you're not the thought. Just like you're this pen because you could see this pen. But your thoughts, you also are not your thoughts. You're the observer of the thoughts. But that part of you that's observing never goes with you to the place of anxiety, never goes with you to that negative thought, never goes to you to that place that's beating yourself up. So the gap that you feel from your true self that's happy, joyous, and free to that part of you that's over here obsessing about, why am I not perfect? There's a gap. And in that gap is the suffering. And so what I learned and what I teach is the crux of my whole teachings is right here, is that we have to close that gap. We have to recognize that when you're anxious, it's not failure, right? So one of my misperceptions is that anxiety, we go around saying it's failure. I should be over this. Why am I still feeling this way? No, anxiety is just feedback. When you feel that, it's alerting you. You're getting an alert that, oh my gosh, my attention or my focus is on something that is not true, that isn't serving me. Because if thoughts hurt, they're not true. Okay. So yeah, because it's not true that we're a piece of crap. It's not true that we're not good as everybody else. It's not true that any of these things. So the truth in me is not going there. So there's like, what do I need to do to get back in touch with myself in that moment? What do I need to do? And that's what I learned. So it's a messenger. It's a messenger showing me where my attention is, where my beliefs have gone, where my story is traveling. And so that's also one of the misperceptions. And then there's 2 other misperceptions that I teach, but yeah, so it is a messenger in that way. Kind of interesting.
So interesting. Oh my goodness. I'm just mesmerized. Oh my gosh, I'm so mesmerized. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Such great information. So, and you also talk about and you've mentioned this three circle analogy, and it shapes our reality and success.
It absolutely does. So this is the other thing that I started to realize, and I try to, because this was all happening inside of me, right? Because I was doing my own work, right? So, and I'm thinking, how can I share this in a way that makes, like, it's a visual, because I'm very visual in my learning. I like to see things.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna, I don't know if this will show up okay, but I'll just draw them while we're here.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know. Can you see those three circles?
Well, yes, we can. Mhm.
Okay, so the left circle, and I just named them this, and the middle circle is your belief window. I'll show it.
Okay.
Okay, so you probably won't be able to read my writing perfectly, but the left circle is your soul circle, and I'll explain
Mhm.
what that means. Middle circle is your belief window,
Yes.
and your outer circle, the right one, is the worldview. Okay, so so here's the thing: is this soul circle is where we start with. This is your true nature. When I keep using this term, your true nature, this is like you come into this world. This is what I believe and what I teach, right? So not like an absolute everybody has to believe this, but we come in perfect and whole. We come in knowing ourselves. We come in connected to source, to something bigger, to our heart, to our breath. We come in pure in a way, right? And as we grow older, we start to recognize, oh, if I do this, I get praise, or oh, if I don't do this, I get this, or right. So we start to learn to adapt in a world that's fear based, but we come from love. We're love based. We're whole and complete. But so the soul circle is the part of us that came in that is our essence, right? Some people call this light, love, energy, source, God, universe, whatever name you want to give it. And that part of you has qualities, okay? Because it's very ineffable. We can't touch it or see it, so we think about it in qualities. This is how I teach it. So the qualities I teach is that it's free. This part of you is totally free. It's not bound by if someone likes me or not. It's not bound by if everything's in control, right? Because it's just not bound. It's totally free, and it's free to be you because it's meant to be you. There's only one you. So the other quality is that it's all knowing. There's no confusion in the essence of you. Confusion comes from the mind, right? Bondage comes from the mind. So we are free and we are all knowing. We are joyful. Okay, remember, joy is not like an emotion, it's like a state of being. And it's just so it's peaceful, it's joyful, it's all knowing, it's free, and it's confident. Okay, just to use that type of a word there, it's very stable. That's how we're supposed to be. When I use the word supposed, this isn't a judgment, but that's how, like, this part of us is meant to be leading our way in life. It's meant to be leading, okay? Because it came in as you to be you. It's like leading the way. All right, let's go enjoy this journey of life. Yes, there'll be challenges. Yes, there'll be setbacks. Yes, that'll all be there because that's part of the human condition experience. But you're going to be leading from this place where you're going to feel safe, whole, and complete. And so you're going to gain wisdom along the way instead of start learning to hide, right? But what happens is we have this belief window in the middle, which I teach as it's your mindset, it's your thoughts, it's your past, it's everything that's ever happened to you gets stored in here. Okay, we know this scientifically, right? That we have this brain that stores information in it, right? And not only in the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind. So it stores everything that's ever happened to you, even things you can't remember. It has the ability to imagine, which is where anxiety tends to come in, future scenarios that I don't want to experience that, so I'm going to avoid this. So it's all your emotions, it's your imagination, it's your memories, it's everything that is stored is in this belief window. And then you have the final circle, which is your worldview. And this is what's happening in the world. This is the world you live in, right? So I lived in a world that was very scary, very, you had to prove yourself. You had to try to be like everybody else. That's what my mind started to tell me. But what most people do is we try to manage and control the world, right? We try to go, well, I'm going to make the world, I want the world to be like this. I want to have these sort of structures and boundaries. I want to control people in my environment, situations. I want to control what people think about me. there's too many unknown factors in the world. It's impossible to control the world. It's impossible to control what anybody thinks about you. It's impossible to control many factors in our life, and that's a reality. So I'm in no way saying, hey, you're going to be liberated from anxiety because you're going to learn to control everything. You can't. I can't. But what we can do is we can learn to have a vision for our life. We can have a worldview. We can have a vision for the reality we want to be living. Okay, like people have goals or visions or dreams. We can start to create that worldview, which gives us direction in our life. Like, I want to be here. Then we have to work. This is where we have control. This is where we start to work, is in the belief window. If we want to see a different world, we have to be a different person. So it's like that saying, your personality creates your personal reality, in the sense of goals are there to help us become the person that can reach the goal. So I can't carry the same beliefs and anxieties and fears that maybe I developed in my childhood or even in my adult life into the world I want to be living. So we can't do an outside in transformation. It's an inside out transformation. Do we have to make changes in our world? Absolutely. In our personal world? Absolutely. I'm going to have to make some choices. But I have to work in this belief window. So what yoga really is, when you look at yoga, how I get back to that, it's about the mind. Yoga is really the process of cleaning your belief window. There's a teaching in the Yoga Sutra, getting back to that book that I mentioned, which is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is translates in Sanskrit to English, which is, you need to learn to harness the fluctuations of your mind. You need to learn to still those fluctuations, not only the mind of the thoughts you can actually see and know about, but you've got lots of them in your subconscious. You have to learn to harness those, clean those, clear those, change those, shift those, so that you can drop into the state of who you really are, your soul circle, and live in this world in a whole new way. So this is the process, which is my From Fear to Freedom program, is really about this journey. Okay. And your world does change. Your world does change because, there's that saying, everything is created twice, first on the inside, then on the outside. And that's a chapter in my book, is everything's created twice. And I used to think like, oh, I have this goal, so I want to be happier. I want to be more confident. So, okay, that goal's there, but I wasn't really changing myself. I wasn't really knowing how to build confidence, build stability, understand what joy meant. It was like, it's a totally different work and skill set. And it's easier because it is our true nature. It actually is, once you understand it, okay. So I can connect to that.
But how long did it take for you? How long did this journey take for you?
Well, I've been on this journey for over 2 decades, 25 years. I'm going to be 50 this year. I really started when I was 24, 25. And it's ongoing. So the cool thing about transformation and change and growth is that until we're not on this planet anymore, that's what we're doing. Kind of this involution, right? So we come in and we're like whole and complete, and we kind of start to contract a little bit, like, oh no, I need to be like everybody else. Oh no, that must be what success looks like. I better go over there. Oh no, like, we're trying to conform, and it's not a bad thing, right? We're kind of trying to be like the world wants us to be. But what's simultaneously happening is, as we're forgetting who we really are, we're on a journey of remembering who we are. So I in no way am like enlightened or like at the end point, right? Like, I'm still remembering who I am. But here's the deal. What has shifted for me in these years, and I do still experience anxiety. I want to make sure everybody that's listening to me doesn't think I'm on some mountaintop, right? Mm-hmm. I experience anxiety. I experience self-doubt. I experience all the things. I experience anger, resentment. I go through all those things. But what has happened is I come from it at a place now where I can simultaneously truly remember and tap into who I am. And that allows me to experience those things in a different way. So this has taken me all this time, right? But it's not like it's going to take 25 years. I mean, this is just deepened. So the thing about transformation is it's a spiral. It's not a straight line. So we have one piece of information, like it could be the piece of information is, your true nature is really free. And I might have an understanding of that today that 10 years from now is going to look so different. because I'm going deeper in with that same teaching. So there's nowhere to get. And I always tell people, you're not behind. Don't let your brain, you're never behind. There's nowhere to get other than to keep expanding and growing and becoming, because we're always becoming and being. So, yeah, but from when I started to now, I've been on this path for 25 years.
That's good. That there's nowhere to be. That's good. Okay, that's good. Good. I might have to rewatch this one myself. So this is going to be maybe my last question. I don't know. You might say something that'll trigger something else, but we're running out of time, so I'll have to ask. What is the one most important thing we need to do to really solve our anxiety problem? And I know that's a big question.
It is a big question, and it's the one thing that I think is what we're missing in the conversation is we have to heal the spiritual malady. And I know that, and spirituality is just a journey inward to who we really are. To really conquer it and to overcome it, we have to not just keep treating trigger. We can't just keep treating symptoms, right? We can't just keep treating that. It's important to treat symptoms. Absolutely. We have to kind of put the let me calm the symptoms, but let's actually get into the deeper work. And so the way that this kind of feeds into that other misperception that I teach about, which is that anxiety is the symptom. Okay, so oftentimes we'll go, and I was diagnosed with anxiety, right? And I'm no way in conflict with the biomedical. There's different ways to look at this, right? And I definitely believe that we do get diagnosed with anxiety. It is a diagnosis. But I'm talking in the bigger picture. In the bigger picture, it's a symptom of the greater diagnosis, which is the number one diagnosis for all of us humans in terms of suffering, is that we're disconnected from ourselves. We don't know who we are. We aren't connected to source. Do you know what I mean? So we have to get linked into that. So that's the number one way. That's the number one thing. And we have to commit to this journey. So it's twofold. There's like a level of commitment that has to happen. So when I start working with people in my program, even in the first week, we're talking about commitment. We're talking about really getting into it, because this isn't a quick fix. We have to get over, absolutely let go of, throw out that quick fix mentality, which is what, when we lean into those tendencies, getting back to our conversation, people want everything fast now. But if you persist, and there was this saying I heard recently, which I like. It says, slower is faster. I don't remember where I heard this, but slower is faster. And if you do it slow and you get into the work and you just go in, you will make faster progress versus if you're trying to just get the quick fix and not even doing what needs to be done. You just keep starting over. You keep you're just putting Band-Aids on it. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. We have to do the deeper work. We have to really stop with the quick fix and get into the cause.
Yeah. And it'll take time.
It'll take time. Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you told us about your coaching program, actually quite a bit. So that's pretty good. So I think anybody who is experiencing anxiety or something that you said can touch them.
Yeah.
They can, I put your website. Nope. Is that your website?
Yeah. joystonecoaching.com. That's
yes.
it.
Yep. So I put your website up on the screen. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, they certainly can to do a consult, I guess, or to do.
Yeah. So when you go to my website, you'll see, you can schedule a free consult with me, or you can see information about the From Fear to Freedom program. And I do private coaching. We would do a consult. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Oh my goodness. Now look, didn't the time fly though, for real?
It did. I just looked at that. I said, oh my goodness. Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. Because I tell you, we were talking right before the show, and I said, oh, Joy, this show is an hour. And sometimes it seems long, but today it flew by.
It did fly by. I can't believe we have less than 5 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, less than 5 minutes, and actually a little less because we actually, do an outro and everything else.
Right.
So is there any quick, and you actually have given us a lot of information, so I don't even know if this is a question to ask, but is there any one thing that you want to leave the audience with?
One thing is that I want to leave the audience with is you're perfect just as you are. And you probably heard that a million times. And I always say, stop working on yourself and just start knowing yourself. Get in the business of knowing yourself. and loving yourself, like really investing in that. And that'll change your life. I do believe that.
Wonderful. That's really a good last statement. It really is, because that's kind of actually the crux too of what you've been talking about, throughout our hour,
Yeah.
to really get to know who you are and how you fit into the world.
Yes.
Actually. Yeah.
Like,
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you so much for being a guest. This was just a wonderful, just a wonderful conversation. And I'm hoping that for someone either who is affected by anxiety, know someone is, that they will reach out, or that they've gotten some information to just help them move forward,
yeah,
their journey to finding peace.
definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes. And just a reminder, so I always say this because I don't want to leave without reminding my women who might have other issues like bladder leaks.
Absolutely.
So if that is the case, please be sure to reach out to me at the Pelvic Coach. So it's really easy. It's thepelviccoach.com. And the same thing, you can get a free consult. We can talk about what's going on and maybe, give you some pointers, or I can help you along the way. So that being said, we're going to say goodbye. I hate to say goodbye to Joy, but we do because our time is up. So goodbye, Joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being a guest on the show. I really appreciate it. And I know that your message has resonated with someone.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for having me and asking such great questions. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You're welcome. And until next time, everyone, I'll see you living well with Dr. Sheila. I am Dr. Sheila Craig Whiteman. And next week, I will be back. Take care.